Okay.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Are our IT gurus ready also for us to begin? Great. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sean Carroll. I am the new Chief Procurement Officer for OGS, which makes me your new chairperson, and I appreciate your patience today as I navigate my first meeting. I come from Onondaga County, and I have been here less than 2 months. I'm very excited to see the opportunities this council provides, and I very much appreciate all of your commitment to being here today and to working with us on our what I thought was a fairly full agenda, but I guess is a fairly compact agenda for some of our history. I'd like to start with the approval of the July 14, 2016 meeting minutes. Are there any comments or changes that need to be addressed before we call for a motion? Tom Dipchin from SUNY.
Thank you, and welcome, Sean. Normally, we have in the minutes are the recorded votes, and I noticed they weren't in there. Does that make a difference? Is that required to be in when we voted on each of the my mind's a blank. When we voted on each of the application, or not the application, but the definitions. Thank you, Ron. It just says it was passed. I didn't know if, normally we have everybody's vote, and I didn't know if that was necessary to be included. So that was just a question.
State that the votes passed unanimously.
So I'm going to do a lot of consulting with council, so thank you for your patience. So the minutes are not required to have them enumerated, particularly in the situation where they were approved unanimously.
Okay.
Because the list of attendees would then also be the list of folks that voted on that issue. If it is important to everyone to have that enumerated, we certainly have that available, and we can make it available. Our hope would be to have that be since the vote at large was included, would be to have that be a technical change to the minutes and still attempt to approve the minutes today.
Okay.
So we don't have to bring them back to the committee, but we can certainly provide that if the council would like to see that.
Yeah, I wasn't raising to make it a point. Just that I was just questioning whether we needed to have that. Okay.
Just trying to answer completely. Are there any other questions, or did you have a comment about that? Ron?
Just a clarification on page 6 of the minutes, the last vote to table the application on I believe it's mail fulfillment. I'm recorded as being abstained, and I believe prior to that it was that I had recused myself. So I'm not sure what the difference is there.
We believe you're correct. It should say recused there, and we will make that change. For the minutes of this meeting, the change is that on page 6, the record of the last vote will show Ron Romano from NYS as recused instead of as abstained.
Thank you.
Are there any other changes or modifications to the minutes from the last meeting? The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
I noticed on page 7, the members in attendance, it says that Charlotte Davis was here from OSC. It was actually Margaret Baker. Becker.
Okay. Thank you for that change. We'll make that change also. So in the absence of any other comments or changes, Chair will entertain a motion to approve. approve the minutes as modified by those comments. Tom from SUNY, pronounce your last name for me so I don't do it wrong.
No, you did it right. Hipshin, like you did Hipshin.
Great. Makes the motion. Is there a second? Steve, pronounce your last name for me.
Sarda.
Steve Sarda. Great, thank you. Seconds it. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. Minutes for the July 14th meeting are approved unanimously. Now we'd like to ask Ken Schultz to, as counsel, to provide any legislative updates that may be appropriate.
Thank you, Sean. Just a quick update from the last update. One of the bills mentioned made a technical correction to the definition of restricted period for purposes of procurement lobbying. That bill was signed into law as Chapter 156 on July 21st. Otherwise, no further updates.
Does anyone have any questions on that or on legislative updates in general? Okay, seeing none, we're going to ask Noreen Van Doren to brief us on the Jacob informal ethics position that you were briefed on verbally at a previous encounter, but that has now been provided to us in writing.
Correct. As we previously advised, when we were working on the definitions for various preferred source offerings, questions had arisen regarding recusal obligations for NYSID and PSP, as well as Corecraft. OGS had taken the position that NYSID and PSP, for those definitions where the service offering was something that they offered or they were trying to get that offering approved for them, they had to recuse themselves from not only voting, but also recuse themselves from the discussion. There was also, and we had an opinion previously from Jacob regarding recusal from voting, but we hadn't specifically asked about discussion. We had also been asked if PSP or NYSID, if their representatives were non-voting members, would they then be allowed, since they were not voting, would they be allowed to have a discussion regarding a commodity or a service that they were seeking approval for, or their alternate was seeking approval for, and it would take potentially business away from them. So we sent all of those questions to Jacob. And we received verbally, they told us the night before the July 14th meeting, they told us what the answers were, and then those answers they put into a written informal opinion. The difference between informal and formal, the informal, the opinions are based on prior opinions and they're written by the attorneys. Formal opinions go to actually the board at Jacob. We typically just do the informal opinions, which is what most agencies do. So the opinions were shared with you, and in essence, any member here who has a personal interest, anyone here, if you are a state employee, such as JP, he's a state employee from DOCS. As a state employee, he gets a set salary. Even though Corecraft is a division of DOCS, he doesn't receive any financial benefit based on a Corecraft product. Therefore, the same restrictions don't apply to state employees as they do to members of the public. The determination was that based on the positions that Ron Tascarella and Ron Romano hold with their respective organizations, they do have personal financial interests in the offerings that their entities, are seeking approval from. Therefore, they are recused from discussion of those items during a procurement council meeting, and they are recused from voting on those items as well. If they had become non-voting members, that same recusal applies to non-voting members as far as discussion is concerned as well. So we shared those decisions with everyone. They're posted on the OGS website. And if you have any questions, let me know. Or you can send questions to Jacob if you want.
Are there any questions? Wow, that's what I sound like through a microphone. apparently. Are there any questions for Noreen? Okay, great. Next, we'd like to call on staff to the Procurement Council to give us an update on the preferred source working groups that we discussed at the last meeting. As a shameless plug, the OGS staff are also staff to the Procurement Council and work tremendously hard on putting all of this material together, so it might be my only chance, so I wanted to recognize my staff that worked on this and putting that together. I'd like to turn it over to Christine Irvine, who will talk to us about preferred source working groups.
Thank you, Sean. Each of you should have a report in your packet, a memo from us as staff to the Procurement Council outlining where we are with work groups. For the convenience of everybody here, including members of the audience, we will recap the key points in a summary. At our last Procurement Council meeting, several matters were referred back to the work groups for further findings and presentation, including mail fulfillment services, laundry services definitions, temp personnel office definition, and the removal of sections C and E from the list. OGS has exhausted its internal resources on each of these matters. In order to provide meaningful recommendations on these matters to the Procurement Council, we must establish formal work groups that include individuals from outside OGS. In August, we sent a survey to Procurement Council members seeking their input on the following. We asked for proposed responses, additional questions, additional comments, and which of the 4 working groups would you be willing to participate on? We did not receive any proposed responses, additional questions, or comments from any of the Procurement Council members. But some of the members did volunteer to work on the work groups, and here's who we have so far. On mail fulfillment, we have OMH, SUNY, NYSID, and OGS. For the laundry definition, we have SUNY, we have NYSID, and OGS. For temp personnel office, we have OMH, NYSID, and OGS. For the removal of sections C and E on the list, we have OMH, we have NYSID, and we have OGS. We have several interested non-government entities that have also volunteered to serve on these work groups. That includes for mail fulfillment, the Center for Disability Services, and the Printing Industries Alliance members. For laundry definitions, we have Joanio. For temp personnel office definition, we have Good Temps. And for the removal of sections C and E, we have nobody. So the next steps. For mail fulfillment, OGS as staff to the council is not convinced that establishing another work group would be productive at this time. The recent OSC audit of NYSID recommends increased oversight and monitoring of NYSID's operations. Based on views expressed at the last Procurement Council meeting, some Procurement Council members may be reluctant to approve mail fulfillment until there is a plan in place for oversight and monitoring that ensures that digital printing is restricted as set by the definition. OGS, as staff to the Procurement Council, recommends that we wait until a plan for oversight and monitoring is established between the New York State Education Department, the oversight entity for NYSID, and NYSID. The next steps on the list for C and E. State Finance Law Section 162.3b says that deletions to the list must come from the preferred sources. NYSID made it clear that in the past comments, they are unlikely to agree with removing items from list C and E. OGS is seeking NYSID's formal position on removal of items of C and E by October 9th. Similarly, OGS also seeks Docs and Core Crafts' formal position on the removal of items C and E by October 9th. The next steps for laundry and temp personnel definitions. In order for these groups to produce useful findings and recommendations for consideration by the Procurement Council, we need greater participation by both Procurement Council members and other interested parties. If you are able to provide a representative, please give us the name, email address, and phone number for each person by September 16th. That's this Friday. We would also like to hold the first work group meeting for defining laundry services by October 7th. And we would like to hold the first work group meeting for defining temp personnel office in January of 2017. OGS, as staff to the council, will continue to report the progress of these two work groups at future council meetings.
Thank you, Christine. Do any of the council members have any questions about that material? Tom from SUNY first.
Chris, on the laundry services, since I'll be on that, you say other people, would it be appropriate to have representatives from our two hospitals on that, or am I supposed to represent them?
We would also recommend or welcome participation of other entities, just as we did with mail fulfillment.
I saw other hands. Kim Zadie from ITS.
Good morning. Is the opportunity to volunteer for the temporary personnel... Sorry. Good morning. Is the opportunity to volunteer for the temporary personnel office still available?
Sorry. Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, please.
Ron from NYS.
Just a comment on laundry services. I believe I had forwarded a couple names of industry experts, David Potak and Randy Widrick, in my response, along with Joanio. And also on temporary personnel, I believe David Schock had volunteered, and I also had forwarded his name after the last meeting to sit on that work group.
Okay, we'll look for those.
Lastly, on the, I didn't quite follow all of the mail fulfillment, what the recommendation was, but there is, I believe, a motion on the table that was tabled because it began as a mail fulfillment application that was put forth, which was tabled, and then a work group established to try to address some of the concerns. And so I'm just wondering how that works in terms of Robert's rules and the council's requirements.
Sorry, bear with me a second. Okay, I wanted to make sure we had the answer correct for you. So the application was tabled, and then the next action taken on that was to refer the whole issue to the work group. So the expectation is that the work group would produce work on that subject in order to discuss it. The concern that has been raised to us, to OGS as staff, to the Procurement Council, is that there is some hesitation to take up the work of that work group until the other issues of internal controls that were raised in the audit are addressed. So our expectation is that that work group will remain active and will pick up its work as soon as those other issues are taken care of.
So the motion is allowed to remain as tabled. It does. Is the application being denied, or is again? I'm not expert at Robert's rules, but
so the application has been tabled. The next action that was taken on it was that it was referred to the work group. So further action on it would be empowered by the results of that work group. So it's not there's no motion on the table to deny, but it'd be as tabled, there has been no motion to approve that application either, because it's been referred to a work group. Does anyone have any other questions on those work groups before we proceed? No? Okay. The next items on our agenda are a number of preferred source applications for review. For those of you who saw an earlier version of the agenda, there were 4 applications at one point. In discussions between OGS and NYSID, we identified collectively opportunities to strengthen one of those applications. We're very much looking forward to working with NYSID on that, and we're very excited about that opportunity. For our purposes today, that has been withdrawn from the agenda for consideration, but it will be required to come back in front of this committee. There'll be no action on it, either through a statutory clause, or it will not skip this council before it is reviewed for approval or another action. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. In light of that, we'd like to go to the application by NYS PSP to remove limitations on call center services. We'd like to ask Carrie Laney to present that material to the council.
Sean, thank you. Again, my name is Carrie Laney. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Preferred Source Program for People Who Are Blind. Today, it's my pleasure to present 2 applications to you, both of which are services type offerings that we'd like to seek the council's approval of. Service offerings are very important to us because they really represent a lot of labor. Direct blind labor is our #1 performance metric, and these 2 offerings will greatly enhance our ability to employ more New Yorkers who are blind.
Carrie, would you do us the favor of doing them one at a time?
Sure.
So that we can consider them individually?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So the first one is the call center approval revision. Our predecessor organization was called IBNYS, and they sought approval in 2003 for the call center definition. The Procurement Council at that time approved it, but limited it to 40 seats and in Rochester. IBNYS came back to the council to seek an additional geographic location of Albany. There is no justification for the limitation in the record that either OGS or my organization can seem to find. So we're coming back to you today to seek to remove those limitations. There's a lot of information in your packet, so I don't know if I need to belabor it, but there is also an ESD and OGS recommendation for approval. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Carrie? I'm sorry.
No, I just want to make sure I understand. So currently they have 40 seats in Rochester, some unknown number of seats in Albany, or was it 15?
Actually, and we have a little bit of a correction to make to the OGS recommendation memo. At the bottom of their first page of their recommendation, they stated how many, currently we have people employed in different locations. There was a bit of an error. We don't have anyone currently in Albany. We had provided a list of current contracts, most of which are in Rochester.
Okay.
And we have not come anywhere close to hitting that 40 number of seat limitation. We do have a couple very, very small contracts that fall under the $50,000 mark in other locations, so you wouldn't need, to go out for competitive bidding or need preferred source approval to have those opportunities. So there's one that's very small in New York City and one in Buffalo, but vast majority of the work is being done in Rochester, but I don't think we've even exceeded 20 FTEs total.
Okay, I'm concerned because, first of all, I just learned about this yesterday, and, the health department relies on call centers quite a bit. It's a big, important thing for us. We do often use tax, and I assume this would not impact using the tax call center at all, correct?
Right.
But I do think we have some call centers sort of embedded within some of our other contracts. I think it's not as much as it used to because we use tax more, or we use OCFS call center. But I don't know that there's been any time to really analyze the impact of creating a preferred source offering here that would be statewide, and whether we would have to modify some of our, processes to accommodate that. It just doesn't seem like there's been enough time to really look at that and see how many other places we might have call centers.
Well, I could tell you that DOH has been a customer of ours in the call center space, and Growing Up Healthy hotline is something that's been done in Rochester. I don't know if OJS wants to speak to change in process, potentially.
Carrie, we'll include any of our comments in our staff recommendations when we do that, okay?
So you don't have recommendations yet? I'm confused. We're trying to vote
We're
on something.
next. We
Oh,
just want to
okay.
give the
Okay.
council members an opportunity to ask questions for Carrie, and then we'll address that when we speak to our recommendation.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Thank you.
If this is approved, will you be subcontracting any of these services out to any other entities, or will you be doing it 100% with?
Oh, good question. No, we will not be subcontracting, and we currently have no corporate partnerships.
Okay, is there any restriction for not allowing them to subcontract, or is that kind of assumed in the application, or is there a restriction to be able to?
There's no specific restriction, but there is a requirement about the participation of individuals with disabilities as the labor component to that.
In the OGS application, we would have to list out any corporate partnerships, and we have not provided that because we don't plan on using them or any subcontractors. This work will be done completely by my affiliated agency staff, and 75% of that would be direct blind labor.
Any other questions for Carrie?
Could you tell us a little bit about what you would do?
Use the microphone,
if
please. We can't hear you.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you would do if the cap was lifted? How would that impact? What are your plans for this?
Thank you. And if you didn't hear, the question was how this would impact our plans. Well, certainly we have agencies in Albany who just actually invested in infrastructure to try to get some call center work. So that would allow us to, aggressively market and seek opportunities to help employ additional New Yorkers who are blind in Albany and other parts of the state.
Do you have anything pending right now? Sorry.
We have a few.
Can you
things.
repeat the question?
I asked if there was anything pending right now that you were maybe perhaps started discussions with.
Nothing currently in Albany. We are talking to a New York City customer currently about a small opportunity. Certainly anything under $50,000, you don't need preferred source approval, or the customer doesn't have to go out to bid. So we have a few small opportunities that we are talking about, but those could have moved forward, regardless of today's action.
Just as a reminder to the council, because we are broadcasting this, it is very important that you speak into the microphone. And if possible, would you also identify yourself for the minutes before you ask a question? That would be greatly appreciated. Kim, was your hand the one that was up? Kim Zadie from ITS.
Hi. A question, is all of the work performed inside New York State, or is any performed outside New York or outside the continental U.S.?
All the work is done in state. We can't count any direct blind labor that isn't New York. That isn't in New York.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Carrie? Okay, seeing none, the chair would like to request that the staff to the Procurement Council present the staff recommendations on this application.
Just to recap a little bit of history for you in case you either haven't had time to read the memo or lost track of where we are. In 2003, the Procurement Council granted preferred source status to NYS, Industries for the Blind of New York State. However, as Carrie said, that approval was limited to 40 seats in Rochester and required subsequent approval to remove the restriction of other locations or to move beyond the 40 seats that were set. In 2004, NYS applied for Procurement Council approval to provide services in Albany and to remove the limitation of 40 seats in to remove the limitation of 40 seats in Rochester. The Albany request was approved with a limitation of 8 seats, and in Rochester, the request was denied to lift the 40 seats. The reason for such restriction is not abundantly clear. We could not find any supporting documentation for such restrictions. In 2010, 6 years after the NABA application was approved in Albany, OGS staff approved additional call center services in Utica and New York City as they were unaware of the restrictions that were previously imposed. The report that we issued has a total current FTEs of 16.75. Work is being done in Buffalo, New York City, and we listed Albany and Rochester. This morning we learned that there's no activity in Albany, but the FTE count remains at 16.75. We currently have approved preferred source definitions that provide clarity and framework for this service offering, which we did not have previously. Agencies are responsible for making their own determination of form, function, and utility about whether these services offered by NYS PSP meet their needs, and that has not changed. There are no other preferred source service offerings with such restrictions as this. So OGS, as staff to the Procurement Council, recommends the removal of the limitations on both the number of call center seats and the location of such services. As Carrie had stated, all these jobs stay in New York.
In addition to staff recommendations, we'd now like to ask ESD if they have any comment on this subject.
Christine McCann, Empire State Development. I called several call centers, small call centers across New York State, just to ask if they employ any visually impaired employees. All of them said no. I also asked, do you plan to buy equipment for the visually impaired so that they could work there? And they said no, they have no idea how much the equipment cost. Actually, a couple of the people had to get off the phone with me. They didn't want to chit-chat because they had to answer phone calls. These are very small. Well, a couple of them were very small. They only had like 1 or 3 people, employees. I stayed away from calling the call centers like Verizon or any of those, Time Warner Cable. I figure they're not necessarily small businesses. So I only focused on the call centers that were 100 employees or less. And as I stated, none of them employed visually impaired and none of them were interested in finding out more information. Therefore, ESD also agrees to raise the restrictions so that more visually impaired people can find jobs in New York State.
Thank you, Christine. So the council has been presented the material. They've been presented staff recommendations and ESD recommendations. The chair will now entertain a motion on this application.
Can I ask a question before we go to voting on it?
Yeah, sure.
I noticed in the other application there was information regarding existing contracts for this type of services. Did OGS look to see what the current level of contracts that are statewide for these type of services?
I conferred with our IT team today. Call center services are available. Kim, you may want to weigh in on this because I think you have some experience. that call center services is currently available under our umbrella contract.
I don't want to put any council member on the spot if they're not prepared, so Kim, you're welcome to participate or not as you choose.
So my concern is the same as Mary Beth's, that we have not had much time to understand the impact of this.
Okay. So still the chair is interested in entertaining a motion if there is one.
Make a motion to approve.
Gerard? Okay. From DOB? Makes the motion to approve. Is there a second? Sonia Lindell. Sonia Lindell. Great, thank you. There's a second. So now we'll go into discussion. Does anybody want to speak either for or against the motion that is on the floor? Mary Beth.
So Mary Beth Hefner from Health. I don't know that we necessarily have an opinion for or against right now because I don't think we know enough. We do have several call centers, I believe, that are embedded in portions of our contracts. I don't know enough about it right now to really understand the impact of this. So unless there's a real need to do this quickly, I would ask that it be tabled to the next meeting so we have some time to really look at this.
If I may, can I perhaps provide a little bit more information that will help with the question?
So yes, and as a separate function of that, the effort to table would require the council to make a motion to do that and then to go through that process formally. So before going through that process, unless the council objects, I'd like to allow Carrie to answer those questions because we're still in discussion on the motion to approve. So Carrie, do you want to do that? And do you have enough information about the question?
Yes, upon the representative's second mention of it, I picked up on the embedded part of the contracts. You have some call center work you believe is embedded in some other contracts you have out. The Procurement Council, and I certainly want OGS to say whether they agree or disagree with what I'm about to say, but the Procurement Council just revisited all these definitions for services, contact center, call center being one of them. We do, if we meet the form function utility, if it's a larger opportunity, a larger need, requirement, and the call center is only a part of it, this approval would not impact that because I would be able to meet your full form function utility on that particular solicitation or opportunity. So this is just, this definition is the sum total of what we could provide. And if it's larger than that, then this approval would not have any impact on you going out to solicit that type of work.
I'm not sure that everyone would agree with that. I think we've had experiences where we've had to pull components out to make them available for preferred sources. And I want to be clear, I don't necessarily have an objection to this. I just don't know. And I think that's my concern.
David?
Yep, David Russo, OMH. So again, just the question I asked previously, do we know the value? So do we know the value of the existing call center contracts with entities, so we can kind of get a comparison as to how much, what businesses are currently doing this for New York State?
Are you speaking in terms of New York State in general or just in preferred sources? For preferred sources, we're talking about 16.75 FTEs.
No, but I mean, in the other offering, you guys listed the different contracts that are currently out there.
We do not have a centralized contract for call center services.
Right, but are there agency contracts for call center services that you guys were able to identify as being put in place?
I am aware that ITS is working on call center. I'm aware that Tax and Finance, at least in the past, has had some interest in the call center area. I understand that there is a cluster that is looking at this, but outside of that, I don't have that information.
I believe that Health has a contract for call center operations to stand up very quickly in the event of a public health event. I'm not sure that the contract is currently active, but I know we have previously had such a contract. And that probably would not fall within this because I think we look for medical professionals to take those calls.
I'll add one other thing that might help. I'm aware of also my designating agency, Office of Children and Family Services, also runs a call center in Schenectady. We, in fact, had a civil service contract that when it was up for renewal, actually went to the OCFS clustered call center because they were trying to pull back things that had been executed previous to the cluster. And I know they support, I think it's labor, civil service, and several other agencies with that state call center.
I very much appreciate all of the discussion. Just as a matter of procedure, if we could direct requests to speak through the front table so that we can make sure everybody who wants to make a comment has an opportunity to do that, that would be great. Are there any other discussion points or other actions on the table? Kim Zadie from ITS.
I have one further question, if you don't mind. So I've heard you imply that there are limits on how large this can get, but my understanding of the motion is, of the proposal is that the limits would be removed. So maybe today, my understanding is there's 16.75 FTEs, which means that you could only fulfill the smaller of the jobs. But once we remove that limitation, I don't know why we're implying that it's always going to be the small work that's impacted.
So we are also constrained by the definition of call center services, inbound and outbound. So things that are larger than that definition, we wouldn't be eligible to get that work. Plus, you know, we are also limited to our affiliated agencies in this state and the availability of blind labor to do the work and to train people and invest in all the technologies. And our history has been that they tend to be very small in nature. And you know, I don't want to speak for ESD, but I think when they did their review of possible impacts, they didn't see any major threat in that regard.
Thank you.
Hang on one second, David. Does anybody who hasn't participated in the discussion want to participate at this point? No. Okay, David.
So going back to ESD, so when you did your review, are there any MWBE firms that offer call center type services? And then related to that, back to OGS, any service-disabled veteran-owned businesses that offer call center services?
I did not differentiate between MWBEs or SDVOBs. I just looked on a list that I had through Market Insight that listed small businesses in New York State. I did not look for MWBEs or SDVOBs.
The answer to the rest of your question is we did not provide that with our recommendation either. Either way. Charlotte from OSC.
Question for Carrie. Do you anticipate a large population of visually impaired people looking to do this kind of work?
There is a lot of interest in this type of work. Call center work, the market bears a higher wage typically, and also it represents for us a lot of service type work is hours, and by definition that is the best way for us to advance our mission of creating job opportunities for New Yorkers who are blind. And Christine's experience talking to those small businesses, that's why there's a 70% unemployment rate, almost 70% for people who are blind. So this is really important opportunities for us. We have a limited amount of seats even available physically in our different affiliated agencies. And so there, it would take us quite a bit of an investment to really grow to any major size, but we're hoping with more opportunities and removing these restrictions is a great step forward. We'll be able to, over time, try to get more of this work.
And the direct labor you said was nearly 100% visually impaired?
At least 75%, often it's over 80. Usually, with the use of assistive technologies, JAWS and Zoom text, really able to let people who are blind or completely blind or legally blind be able to do this work.
Thank you.
John?
You just mentioned
Docs,
that
right?
there's a certain number of seats that you currently have available. What is your maximum capacity right now for FTEs if this was approved right now? I mean, there's 16.75 right now. Are we
Right.
talking 20, 40, 100, 1,000? You said the infrastructure's in place.
Definitely not. We wouldn't be able to get to 100 for a couple years easily. And it's hard for these nonprofit agencies to make investments in that kind of technology and training when the work isn't there. So we kind of need to know that we're able to look for additional opportunities that we can accommodate, and then we work with the agencies to make the investments in the technology and the training, which is extensive.
Are there any other discussion items? Mary Beth?
I'm sorry, I just want to add maybe a concern then, because if you're at 16 now and you want to do all of it, it seems like quite a leap. I'm not sure that, it just seems like we're going from 0 to infinity quite quickly here, and I'm not sure that why we need to move so quickly. I don't understand this.
I don't think that's what we're presenting, is that we want to do all of it. There's a lot of opportunities, even with our agency in Rochester, that the requirements exceed the definition of the service of call center, the work functions. So there are things, even with our agency in Rochester, which we've had to pass on because the full-blown requirement, I think your example earlier about needing medical staff to be part of, a certain requirement, we would have to pass on that. And there are things that are too big. We looked at the New York City 311 RFP, and that was very large, and we have to pass on things that we don't currently have the capability to do.
Also, from a procedural standpoint, in general, applications get approved without these restrictions on them. So this is, from a staff to the Procurement Council's perspective, this is more of a normalizing a contract in the way it normally gets approved, because there was not a body of evidence in the historical material about why this restriction was placed to begin with. So we've been going through that history to make sure that all of our applications and all of the materials are in line with the decisions the Procurement Council has made over time. So this was one that there was no other record of why that decision was made. All right, Tom from SUNY.
Mary Beth, you had mentioned, Carrie brought up the issue of being embedded into a larger contract. And so if the contract was for something else, but it had a slice for the call center, Carrie was saying that it would not be applicable here. You said that others would disagree, and there's been experience of being required to pull that piece out. Who makes that decision?
Well, I think that we've had discussions with OGS about that, and I think also with OSC about that. I mean, if they both can assure me that that won't be an issue, then that helps quite a bit.
Right, yeah,
I mean, like for an example, currently we're procuring a contractor to provide transportation services to Medicaid recipients in New York City. To get those transportation services, you first have to call and arrange for the service. There's a call center that does that. There's 100 or so people that sit in a call center in New York City and take these calls. So, does that stay embedded? Does it have to be split off? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Right, so in that case, is the vendor that's doing the transportation also providing the call center?
Yes.
Okay.
Other discussion?
I would, Gerard?
I think, for me, historically looking back, I think the people who were sitting here back in '03 put the two conditions on it because it was brand new and they, like us, they wanted to move slowly. I think the fact that here we are 13 years later and we're talking about they have a limit now of 40 and they're at less than 20. I personally don't think that's a big worry, nor do I think moving the locations, that has, shall we say, moved a little on its own too. And the fact that they're, in many cases, bidding under the requirements anyway is one that I think this is an area that would help this group. It would not, and I can understand to our best ability, hurt small businesses. It definitely is not going to hurt the big businesses. So I guess that's why I feel comfortable and felt comfortable making the motion. Because to me, this is something that if we would all been there 13 years ago, we probably would have said yes 25 minutes ago. Because we would have known the history and lived it and said, well, it hasn't grown that much in 13 years. I don't think it'll be an issue, but if it is, we're still here.
Any other discussion? Tom from SUNY.
I don't know if council can weigh in on this, but is the issue that Mary Beth is concerned about with having to pull out a slice of a larger procurement and then make it fit this definition, is that something that is a reasonable expectation that agencies should be considering when they're going to vote? Or is it a question of, as I assumed, if it's only for call centers, then it would apply to this. But if it was a larger contract that had a piece of the call center, that would not be applicable here as NYS PS believes.
I think the challenge we're going to have is responding to a question in theory that's not in specific. So it's really about whether it meets the form, function, and utility of the description and the definition. Without context, and then also some of that decision is on the agencies that would be doing that. So I don't know that we have an answer beyond that to that question.
Just one other thing. OGS has no authority to tell agencies that they need to split their contracts to give work to the preferred sources. I mean, during the State Purchasing Forum training, there's recommendations that there be, consideration given. Is there a way to split it to provide work for persons with visual impairments, for the disabled? But OGS has no authority. We don't require agencies, and those contracts don't come, like Mary Beth's contracts, Department of Health's contracts don't come to us for OGS to say you need to split this out. So that would not be a requirement from OGS.
Charlotte, and then Carrie, if you want to respond, that's fine too.
In the Controller's Bureau of Contracts, we would see these kind of contracts where a call center might be embedded. And again, speaking hypothetically here, I would say if it's not like a commodity where I could say to the agency, no, you're not going to buy those gloves. You're going to have to split those gloves out of the contract, which would presumably be very simple to split that out. If it was a service where the call center was really just one element of it, it's not as easy to split it out. And I think in those cases, for the most part, you would not be able to meet the agency's form, function, utility, because the call center would be a necessary part of something else and not just something that you threw in.
Carrie?
And I was going to add something very similar. And it pains me to say this, but I've begged, pleaded, and cajoled agencies to do that, and I have not been successful once in 3.5 years. I would like someday maybe, Procurement Council guidelines or something to speak to that, which would come before the Procurement Council, but I have never been successful in having a piece of a solicitation I saw or some other opportunity pulled out where we could meet the form, function, utility of a section of it, and we end up being passed over because the entire requirements exceed the definition.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, there is a motion on the floor. So if the council has any other actions they want to take, you can propose that now. Otherwise, we'll close discussion and we'll move towards a vote for the motion to approve the application. Are there any other actions? Okay. Seeing none, then the chair moves this for a vote. The motion is to approve this application. And so could we have a show of hands of who is in favor of the approval of this application? Can you just leave your hands up for 1 second? Okay, you can put your hands down. Any abstentions? I'm sorry, any nays? Seeing none, any abstentions? Seeing none, the application is approved.
Thank you.
Carrie, while you're there, do you want to start talking about your second application?
Yes, thank you. So my second service application in front of you today is for transcription. We had submitted an application to the Procurement Council via OGS back in March, but we withdrew it because we understood that there were some deficiencies in how we presented the application. So this is a revised application before you. Transcription is already a vetted and approved preferred source offering. Our value added, our direct blind labor, using adaptive technologies, we can transcribe and proof using 100% direct blind labor. This labor will be in New York State. It will be done at our affiliated agency with their employees. We looked at our pricing. There were existing centralized contracts, and we were well within the 15% of those state contract holders. Our agency in Buffalo has done some small commercial contracts, and they have trained transcriptions on staff. They've also done some work for some local schools that needed things transcribed. This was vetted by ESD, and their recommendation letter is in your packets as well. And the majority of state purchasing volume that does exist on those state contracts is for court reporting. And that's not something that we are presenting to you today for approval. So based on if we get the approval today, we'll be moving forward with an opportunity with Department of Health, the Office of Health Insurance Programs. It's estimated value of $23,000. We'll post between DOH has about 3 to 15 webinars per month. The webinars vary in length from 20 minutes to several hours, and our affiliated agency will use blind labor to listen to the webinars and transcribe and proof the material, which is used to create a closed caption YouTube video. So that is our application.
Are there any questions for Carrie? Tom from SUNY.
Tom from SUNY. So Carrie, if there's a video.
Dave Russo, OMH. So,
I'm sorry, David. Tom was talking, and then we'll get to you next.
I'm too soft-spoken. So if there's a webinar that's done and then it's recorded, they're doing the transcription of that, but they're putting in the closed captioning. You're putting in closed, or you're just doing a transcription of what was said on the webinar.
It's not closed captioning. It's just creating pages of words transcribing what the webinar content.
Okay. So in this application, would closed captioning be part of that?
I don't think so. I don't remember that coming up in our discussions with the customer. It is people who are blind typing using assistive technology to create Word documents to transcribe the content from the webinar.
Okay. I was just wondering if the technology now allows you to take the webinar and with the transcription to include that in the webinar again, to then provide that as an archived webinar with the transcription.
Definitely software is used, but what happens is that when you only rely on technology, you get a lot of mistakes. You get bad name spellings, you get, as if you've ever watched, on television, something that's closed captioning, about
Right.
a third of it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I was wondering if what you're doing then can be added to provide the closed captioning for an archived webinar. That's, I guess, to eliminate that, the problems with the adaptive, with the technology that doesn't
Right.
correctly articulate what was said.
Well,
Carrie,
when you
can we-
transcribe, sorry.
Sorry, the definition that this work is under does not currently include live closed captioning.
Okay.
So they could transcribe a video and then the customer agency could put it on a static version
Okay.
of that, but it's not designed for live closed captioning, and that's not part of the definition right now.
Okay.
David, I'm sorry if I accidentally acknowledged you while
No problem.
he was talking.
Dave Russo, OMH. So looking at the memo from OGS, it listed existing contracts, an estimated annual value of over 560,000, and then in the application, anticipation of 3 to 6 people to be employed. I mean, is that, it doesn't seem to equate to, or is it that they wouldn't be able to take over all those types of services, or would there be additional need for more people? I'm just.
The universe of contract activity on the centralized contract is reflected in your application packet. What the blind may be doing is not necessarily able to be met by or expected to replace all of the state contracts. Again, this all comes down to form, function, and utility of the agencies and what their needs are.
Yeah, that would be the outside scope of what would be possible under this, but the application does not currently reflect a capacity to do all of that work at this current juncture. So it's being judged on its face based on what the proposed capacity is from PSP.
So I mean, so then will we be requesting a waiver then for services if you're not able to provide them?
Exactly.
Carrie?
A lot of it is court reporting, and we are not asking for permission to do in-person live court reporting. A lot of that on the existing contracts. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. A lot of the existing contract spend is for live in-person court reporting, and that is not what we're seeking approval to do.
I'm sorry, I can't see your name tag.
It's Lisa Davis.
Are you Lisa?
Yes.
Okay.
From OPWDD.
Lisa.
I was wondering whether this would also include transcribing for labor purposes, labor union purposes, and how does HIPAA apply to this service? For example, if there's with OPWDD, we have 24/7 operations, and often there's situations where there's allegations of abuse or whatever, so it turns into a labor union issue, and things are taped, and then we want things transcribed, but there may be medical issues about both staff and the individuals we serve. So I was just wondering the impact on that need. Thank you.
Carrie, do you want us to also field that question?
My answer was going to be, and you may have a better one, but whatever HIPAA restrictions there are would apply to us or any other potential contractor.
Yeah, and again, this is not for a live transcription, but if an encounter like that was recorded, any of the applicable statutes, HIPAA or any other restrictions that would be on there would be something that would have to be passed on to any vendor that provided those services, whether they're a preferred source or not. And the expectation would be that the vendor could show that they could be compliant Otherwise, they wouldn't meet the form and function of the application.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that there was something that PSP would be interested in if this goes down the path that you're requesting.
I would have to do a little research on the HIPAA part, but I would definitely love to talk to OPWDD about that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Carrie? Or I think I'd like to call on staff to go through their recommendation in case that helps clarify any lingering questions that anyone has.
OGS as staff to the Procurement Council looked at this. We brought it to the Procurement Council for a vote because of the high spend in the centralized contract category of being over $500,000. It brought this to the level of a Procurement Council decision. As Carrie mentioned, DOH had reached out to NYS PSP and asked them for assistance in transcribing webinar information that they have posted on their website to, I believe, increase their transparency or their compliance with accessibility laws. NYS PSP's Olmsted Center had some expertise in this area, and they offered to do a pilot program for NYS PSP at no cost to the state. We do have an approved Procurement Council definition. The activity that is before you today fits within that definition. In looking at the centralized contract and comparing pricing of our 3 contractors that offer this service for OGS centralized contract, the PSP pricing is competitive and less than 15% of the market. And that table is in your memo that we put forward to you. We also gave you a matrix that outlines how this application complies with the requirements of 1 through 10, identified in the preferred source guidelines as being required to obtain Procurement Council approval. So our staff findings are that they have clearly identified labor steps that explain the work and the process that is expected for the blind and visually impaired employees, and it represents an opportunity for them to grow. The transcription services may provide meaningful long-term employment, currently for 3 to 6 blind and visually impaired employees. These services, using the current OGS contracts for transcription as a comparison, are competitive and within requirements. The application is in compliance with both preferred source and Procurement Council guidelines, and ESD supports the approval of this application. So OGS, acting as staff to the Procurement Council, recommends that this application be approved.
Does ESD want to highlight anything in their recommendation?
I'll just summarize briefly. I spoke with 3 court reporters in Buffalo. I chose Buffalo because your member agency is in Buffalo. The first woman I spoke to was very helpful. She said that this is not something that court reporters do. So I asked her, well, what agency, who would do something like this? What company could I call for something like this? And she had no clue who anyone could call, DOH or myself could call for this service. She said that it was very expensive for a court reporter to do this because their hourly fees are high, and with all due respect, they have more important like depositions to go through to transcribe as opposed to like a webinar type of meetings. So ESD recommends, ESD's recommendation is no objection to this, since there is no effect at all to any of the court reporters, and there's no company out there to do this sort of transcribing.
I neglected to mention, currently on the list of offerings, NYSID does have a check mark. NYSP does not have a check mark. But when we checked with NYSID, they indicated they have not done this work since probably about 2010. They are still available to do this work should it come up, but NYS PSP is seeking a check mark as well.
David.
So just for a clarification, so the information that you gave us regarding the existing OGS contracts of the average of 560, does that include court reporter?
Yes, it does.
So, I
That's
mean-
the entire universe of what falls under transcription services. We weren't able to break it out separately, so we thought it was a better idea to provide all of the information.
But the application is not looking to do transcription of court reporter. So I mean, the reason it came to us is because the threshold of over the 500,000, but if you had backed that out, potentially that wouldn't be the case, and that would be something that OGS would be, it wouldn't come to the council.
I don't think we disagree with you at all, but the opportunity to have the council consider it, to be sure, seemed prudent.
So I mean, so out of the 560, there's no indication as to whether or not the court reporting of this is 300,000 or 100, I mean, so there's no, we don't really know the impact of what it would be available.
Our current sales reports for that did not divide that in a meaningful way that we were able to provide to the council.
And then just for ESD, any of the entities that are on here, are they MWBE or service disabled, or all service disabled goes up?
I did not check that either. I just found, I took this list from Dun & Bradstreet, the Dun & Bradstreet website, hoovers.com, and I just looked up court reporters. I did not double check that they were MWBEs or SDVOBs.
Carrie, and then we'll talk about whether the council wants to consider a motion before we consider discussion.
I'll just add, I should have mentioned it earlier, that DOH did actually reach out to one or more of those centralized contract holders, and the vendor didn't want to take that opportunity to do the webinar.
Okay, thank you. John, do you have something? And then procedurally, we really should have a motion on the floor before we continue discussion.
So the approval of this would be, we're approving PSP to be a preferred source for transcription services. Carrie, your intention, though, is that you're not going to be doing court reporting, even though that's covered underneath this. It's just the focus of your guys' work is transcribing webinars.
We have no intention to do court reporting. In fact, that requires you to be physically present, and we're not going to be going to on-site. Everything will be done at our affiliated agency, listening in on whether it's recorded or otherwise of testimony or whatever the content is.
But the potential, even though that's not your intent, the potential is that you're approved for transcription services and all that's accompanied in that definition.
I think we would think that they were different definitions.
Yeah.
So while the material we provided includes the entire bulk of transcription services, because we were unable to break it out, in order to get a check mark for courtroom reporting, you would actually, I think you would need a different definition. Hang on, let me.
Okay.
All right, so that's why staff is so important. I think our answer is not prohibited under this, but there would be an investment in equipment. There would be some logistics issues, Carrie,
Yes.
in appearing in person, and I don't think that's the intention at all. But you are correct. It appears not to be prohibited under the definition.
Okay, thanks.
I would be fine with any clarification on that point.
So does that mean that state agencies have to go and ask PSP every single time they want to do any sort of in-person transcription services? Because it's part of the definition there, therefore we're required to ask to make the offer.
Yes, so this would be in addition to asking NYSID now.
I don't think NYSID now has approval for court reporter?
So transcription.
For transcription services, yes. So the chair will entertain a motion if the council is so inclined.
Right,
David?
Real related to the previous application, so again, if there's an opportunity for subcontracting this out to other entities, this 70% rule would still apply. Is that in the application if they decide to subcontract out this to other partners? Is that, taking the court reporter example, they don't do that, but there's other entities that can. Seeing that they have the ability to do court reporting as part of the application, is there a requirement that whoever they subcontract with would have to meet that percentage of blind individuals, visually impaired?
So I think in talking about it, our expectation would be that if there was going to be a subcontractor or a corporate partner, it would have been part of the application. But in terms of subcontracting, the responsibility here is to meet the labor number for individuals with disabilities. So even if there was some mechanic that allowed a subcontract, the application, I believe, says 100%, right? Okay, so it would absolutely have to meet the same standards. Sorry, Carrie?
No, I was just going to add on to that the application requires us to list any corporate partners. We are not proposing any corporate partners or subcontracting. And yes, the direct blind labor will be 100%.
Okay. The chair will still consider a motion if the council would like to make one. Is there a motion to approve or, Mary Beth from DOH, yours is a motion to approve?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there a second? Gerard from DOB. So with a motion to approve on the table, that will open discussion. Although we have successfully opened discussion already. Are there any other council members that would like to rise to a point during discussion? No. Seeing none, the chair calls for a vote on the motion on the table, which is a motion to approve. If you could signify a yes by raising your hand, that would be great, and hold it there. Great. And you can put your hands down, and if there are any no's, would you signify by raising your hand? Seeing none, are there any abstentions? No. Seeing no objections and no abstentions, the motion to approve passes, and that application is approved. Thank you, Carrie, for participating today.
And thank you to the council.
We have a third preferred source application to appear in front of the council today. Is Michael Elmendorf available to speak to that application?
Excuse me, Sean?
Ron?
If I may, I just want it for the record that I recuse myself from voting, also the discussion.
Absolutely. We had already noted that, but I'm sorry I didn't say it out loud. So NYSID and PSP did recuse themselves on the vote on transcription services, and also PSP recused themselves on call center services also. We saw that. So we did note that, but just verbally for the record, absolutely, and thank you for doing that. Michael.
Good morning. My name is Michael Emmendorf, and I am the Deputy Director for Marketing Sales at Corecraft. With me today is Kenny McKeegan, the Industrial Superintendent at Great Meadow. We manufacture our chemicals. I would like to thank the Procurement Council for the opportunity to make this presentation for preferred source status on the listed chemical items in your folders. I would also like to thank the OGS staff who helped Corecraft prepare the documents necessary to make this a successful presentation. I would especially like to thank Patty Sabrecka, Christine Irvine, and Noreen Van Doren for the most appreciated direction in the preparation of this presentation. Together with the Governor, our Commissioner, and DOCS, Corecraft is committed to meaningful programs and skills development to enhance returning citizens' opportunities for employment. When it comes to recidivism, education is number one, The PI program is number 2, and programs like industries is number 3. More than 95% of inmates return from prison. Inmates have been working for prison industries for over 200 years in New York State. The name Corecraft has been in existence for 100 years. Corecraft has been producing chemicals at Great Meadow for 53 years. Corecraft produces quality goods to customers while employing inmates and providing them with realistic work experiences. This helps reduce the recidivism and lowers the taxpayers' cost of maintaining inmates in prison. This is a Corecraft mission. At Great Meadow and Washington Correctional Facilities, Corecraft produces soaps, detergents, disinfectants, sanitizer, vehicle maintenance supplies, and more. The production team consists of approximately 160 employees, civilians, correctional officers, and up to 133 inmates. The facilities include 2 manufacturing points, 3 warehouses, and a business office. The products we have listed today are not new products. Corecraft has been selling for them for years, just under a different subheading, example, cleaning products. The application for preferred source status does not give one preferred source a monopoly on a product simply because they were the first to apply. There are incidences where in preferred source listings there are shared commodities by more than one preferred source. Corecraft actually sells product to other preferred sources for their distribution. The inmate at Great Meadow receive safety training. Inmate workers are trained to use professional protective equipment, PPE, and to learn how to interpret safety data sheets, SOS, for the chemicals they handle. They are also trained in the appropriate spill containment and disposal. They learn how to handle chemicals properly. Inmates are trained for the appropriate handling of various chemical compounds, even ones considered hazardous. They are trained to use hand carts, pallet jacks, stretched wrap machines, as well as electric and propane-powered fork trucks. Workers learn to properly identify and handle a variety of chemicals used in our manufacturing process. They are trained to follow written protocols that are necessary to manufacture quality products. As a result of this extensive training, Corecraft is able to retain certifications as a manufacturer of U.S. EPA registered germicide and sanitizers, a U.S. FDA registered hand sanitizer, several Green Seal certified cleaners, and diesel exhaust fluid, which is certified by the American Petroleum Institute. Although we have specific inmates assigned to quality assurance, each and every inmate receives this training. Once approved for use packaging, a batch of product is reused for packaging. Great Meadow has 6 production fill lines, each one of which operates up to 20 workers. The lines are state-of-the-art. Inmates would use the same equipment in many private sector manufacturing plants. Our equipment produces packages as small as half-ounce bar of soap up to 330-gallon totes. With warehousing, once production is complete, our packages are sealed, full pallets of material are sent to the warehouse in preparation for shipping. Inmates stretch wrap each pallet, appropriately label the contents of the pallet, and load tractor trailers using each pallet jacks or forklifts. Recycling, Corecraft takes pride in being environmentally responsible. Great Meadow, Washington trains inmates in various recycling methods. We recycle or reuse old corrugated cardboard, metal, paper, plastics, and old clothing. In the last fiscal year, Corecraft inmates at Great Meadow reused and recycled $463,000, 651 worth of containers in production shops. We continually upgrade our facilities and equipment and ongoing efforts to increase the quality of our goods and services while reducing operating costs. A recent example of the new diesel exhaust fluid DEF manufacturing area that is currently under construction within Great Meadow Soap Shop. When the area is completed in the fall of 2016, we will train inmates to produce DEF ISO 422 protocols as required by the American Petroleum Institute standards. By manufacturing DEF ourselves, we should realize a cost savings of around 40% per gallon. We at Corecraft and Great Meadow in Washington adhere to sound business principles in order to keep current and stay competitive in the marketplace. This means we must have an uncompromising commitment to quality. Our quality control program includes a team of QC inspectors coordinated by our quality control supervisor. The team inspects raw materials, performs in-process inspections, does quality finishing on finished goods, raw materials, and maintains appropriate documentation. Due to our commitment to quality, in addition, due to our commitment to quality, an additional 1,200 feet laboratory space is being approved to be built at Great Meadow. Construction is anticipated to be completed sometime in 2017. Upon its completion, the QC team of inmate laboratory technicians will not only have the capability to test all chemical products received and manufactured at Great Meadow, but it will also have the skills and tools necessary to quality test the majority of products processed and manufactured by corporate facilities throughout New York State. With the combined efforts of the civilian staff, correctional officers, and inmate employees, Courtcraft successfully meets and demands the gross sales that exceed $6.8 million annually. More importantly, many of our former inmate employees have used their newly acquired skill sales experience to obtain jobs upon release. Despite the large volume of sales through Courtcraft's chemical production plant at Great Meadow, it's currently running at about 75% capacity. Having all of our products added to the OGS list of preferred source offerings and the e-marketplace should increase the demand for our products. At full capacity, we should employ the additional 45 inmates daily. This would assist us in our mission of producing valuable skills to even more inmates. More demand, more sales, and a lower recidivism rate is highly beneficial to New York State. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions.
Any members of the council have any questions for Michael? David?
David Russo, OMH. So are you currently providing these chemicals to one of the other preferred sources for them to then resell?
We used to provide chemicals to NYS, but we also provide clothing to NYS as well, to one of our other manufacturing plants.
Okay. So do you have an estimate of the value of the chemicals that you would be adding that you would have provided to, is there an amount that you would know annually?
We already manufacture the chemicals that we're putting on the list. We've been doing it for years, just under different subheadings. With the help of OGS, they've broken that out. It's like cleaning products used to contain soap bars, and our cleaning products for kitchens now that's all broken down in their subheadings.
If I can, David, I think staff recommendations might help clarify some of those questions, and there's certainly other opportunity for discussion after. Would you be amenable to that?
Yep, no problem.
Great. Does anybody have any other questions for Michael before we ask for staff recommendations to maybe add some clarity to this? Okay.
OGS, as staff to the Procurement Council, worked with Courtcraft to assist them in presenting this application to you. First and foremost, there are no new products in this application. These are all current products that they have been manufacturing and selling for quite some time. The Procurement Council's list of preferred source offerings was established in 1996. In talking to Courtcraft, we found out that they've been manufacturing chemicals since 1963. So as part of their preferred source offerings, this is what they've been doing. Their current authority is on the list as cleaning products, and there is no differentiation of what those items are, how many there are, how many are, if something should new pop up under the current conditions, there would be no way to identify that. So by leveling the playing field and making sure that all of the preferred source items are identified, we're creating an apples to apples comparison and letting people know what is approved on the list. So part of this is also tied up to OGS's e-marketplace catalog that we are doing. This is a particularly difficult and complicated process for us to do this with Courtcraft. It's the first time it's been attempted. Unlike NYS, PSP, and NYSID, Courtcraft, the process for approving pricing is very different. The commissioner of docks is responsible for approving that pricing as outlined in state finance law and corrections law. And there's also another intersect between Courtcraft and DOB that also impacts pricing and how they set their prices. Courtcraft was able to demonstrate to us that they are in compliance with those requirements for these items that you have before you. Procurement Council approval of these items would generate 17 check marks on the list of preferred source offerings, and also added an additional 3 new commodity categories as described in Section A. Those categories are automatic dishwasher rinse aid, mold and mildew stain remover, and windshield wiper fluid. If you look at the list currently as displayed on our website, none of those 3 items are on the list. By adding them to them, we would put them on the list and add a check mark for Corecraft. If the other preferred sources have those items and they have been previously approved but yet were not identified, we can work to get those added to the list as well. We're just looking to, as I said, create a level playing field. Because NYS, PSP, and NYSET are recused from voting on this or having comments because they have similar offerings, staff to the Procurement Council reached out to both of them and asked for their comments. Those comments are reflected in the report that is before you. But in a nutshell, what it says is that NYS PSP did not have any objections to this because these items are not new items. They're items they've already been selling. NYSET had told us that they expect to have a $1.5 million impact on their sales if we make this addition for Corecraft. They figured 61 comparable items in 20 categories were presented that overlap to what their offerings are. OGS found no basis to support that, and NYSET did not provide any additional information to support that claim. OGS staff findings are that the prices are established by law, and they have demonstrated compliance with those. Approval of this will support the mission of Corecraft and inmate labor. The products, as we said earlier, have been offered all along. We give you Attachment A and Attachment B to explain what those are. And based on the foregoing, we recommend Procurement Council approval for the items, and that in the future, any new items get added in the same manner.
So we'd like to ask, is there an ESD comment on these applications?
I researched 10 chemical companies located all across the state to see, first I looked on their websites to see what they sell. Some of them sell similar products, but a lot of them also sell other products. I listed them here in my recommendation. Equipment of all kinds, fans, heaters, buffers, floor buffers, and they also rent and repair that equipment, so they have other side jobs instead of just selling the chemicals. 2 of the companies I spoke to, I researched 10 of them on the internet to see what they sell. I called a number of them, but 2 of them said, well, I called most of them, but 2 of the companies said that they sell 100% of what Corecraft sells. And that, but they also, on their websites, they also said that they sold these other products, or some other products. So I determined that the majority of the small businesses that sell these products in New York State will not be greatly affected, especially since Corecraft has already been selling these for years. So Empire State Development's recommendation is no objection to this application. And Dave, I did not research MWBEs or SDVOBs. I did not differentiate them.
Thank you, Christine. There is an application in front of the council. Chair will entertain motions, other actions by the council at this point.
Sean?
David first.
Yep, ask additional questions from OGS regarding their memo. So a couple of things. So the 3.7 million that you estimate for the value of this, is that based? I mean, is there currently OGS contracts with other vendors that are providing these type of products, or?
The basis for that dollar amount of $3 million comes from the memo that came from their commissioner. There was a spreadsheet attached to that. We picked out the items that are in this application, and we added up the value of those items, and that's where we came up with that number. It was data reported by Corecraft.
Are there currently OGS contracts that provide these type of products currently? And what?
Yes.
So do we know the value of what the spend is on that from OGS contracts?
Specifically item by item, I don't know that we can do that. The sales reports I don't think are that granular. We have industrial commercial, we have lots of different things to get cleaning products from. Patty is here, I believe. Sure.
The other thing to keep in mind here is that these items are approved. So agencies that were doing this would be already buying this through there. So the items on OGS contract would probably not be additionally reflective because this is already happening. So that's why we didn't go back to the vendors and try to enumerate that a little better.
Okay. And then just going back to the previous question I asked about, so are the other preferred sources buying their product currently from Corecraft then to resell? Do you know if that's currently the case?
I will defer to Corecraft to answer that question.
To my knowledge at this time, no, but the ability to do that is there.
Back to your question on pricing, I can tell you that OGS did look at the pricing of these items for the effort of looking at and applying those items into the e-marketplace catalog, just the same as we did for the other preferred sources, both NYS, PSP, and NYSID. But our authority to look at that pricing is not to approve it. That is actually approved by Corecraft, or I'm sorry, by DOCS, as prescribed in law.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Yes, just so I can make sure I understand. The listing in attachment B is what's going to appear now on the website as we know it. It wouldn't include all the different items individually, would it? It will include the... Is it just B or is it A and B that would be on the website?
It would be just B, would show up on the list of preferred source offerings with a check mark.
Okay.
That's what it is. The category of A, the sheet A, the attachment A, was just to show you the variety of sizes and products, that there's more things, but list B is really what would show up on the website.
Okay, and because other preferred sources like NYSID and have products, are they required to do this as well, or is this Corecraft came forward to do it themselves?
NYS, PSP, and NYSID also have been doing this right along. As part of our effort for e-marketplace, we looked at, we go back and we talk to the preferred sources and say, before we let you add this, you've got to demonstrate that you have approval for this item. In that effort, we added over 30 items for both entities. I believe NYS, PSP picked up, to get a check mark, they picked up several items, and this is the same process.
So, but they're already on the list. So
they're already on the list, yep.
In terms of,
yep.
We're not adding new categories.
Correct.
Okay.
None of this is new.
Mary Beth?
I'd just like to hear more about the NYSID situation here, because from reading this, NYSID is claiming that 50 to 60 people will be put out of work if we approve this. I'm not sure I understand. If Corecraft has this as a preferred source, don't they get first dibs always? And is something changing? I'm not sure I understand what's really changing that would impact NYSID. And you said earlier that you couldn't confirm NYSID's claim, but does that mean that you found it to be incorrect, or your information is incomplete? And if it's the case that it's incomplete, and it's a likelihood or any chance that 50 to 60 people would be put out of work were we to approve this, should we wait and find out more about that?
there's many layers to your question. The first part, NYSED cannot speak at the table, but they can have a representative from the audience come up and speak to address their specific issue that you've raised. So I would throw that out as one option. As far as our ability to measure that or impact that, I think our approach to that is that none of these are new things. If they were new things, then I think their claim would be valid, but because these are not new items, they're items they're already selling, and the order of precedence that's applied to commodities is that Corecraft is first, NYS PSP is second, and NYSED is third. So that's what the law says, that's what has to apply. They should be going to Corecraft and asking, do you have these products? So this is no different. By adding the check marks on the list, it's going to make it more transparent and easier for users to know what they have, but it should not change the process.
David?
David Russo again, OMH. So you had mentioned the e-marketplace. So when these products are listed on the e-marketplace website, so if they are offered by all three or multiple preferred sources, are you identifying as to what the order of precedence is as to which ones they should be selecting?
E-marketplace identifies the items as having a check mark for each organization.
Right, but
the preferred source items in the e-marketplace are designated with a little icon that says that these are preferred source items. And the way the system is set up is that they float to the top, so that when a user goes in to look at the e-marketplace, they should see the items in the preferred order of Corecraft, NYS PSP, and NYSED before they see any other items.
okay. So is that made? I mean, is there something in the system that tells the person that these are in order of? You know what I mean? I mean, even though they show up 1, 2, 3, is it into? You know, how does the user know that that's the order in which they should be selected?
They would go to the law or rely on their internal procedures that should tell them what to do.
Excuse me, there is a representative from NYSED here if
Yep,
you
that's what
wish
we were going.
that he answer Mary Beth's question.
I don't think we have any objections to that, and we appreciate you being present. Michael, would you mind?
Nope.
Great. So would you state your name for the minutes, and then do you want to answer the question directly, or do you want to have the question redirected to you?
I'm Tim Mott from NYSED. If you please repeat the question, that'd be great.
It's a multi-layered question. So I think the real direct question is if you could discuss the impact that this would have on NYSED. It's a little unclear to me if agencies perhaps should have always been going to Corecraft and they haven't been doing so, and so this is a correction, or whether there's legitimate purchasing through NYSED that will be lost, and how 50 to 60 jobs could possibly be lost.
Well, I think there's a couple points. One, that NYPSP and NYSED has been working through this process with OGS since probably late 2014 into 2015 regarding the e-marketplace. And I believe if you look at page 4, it says that both NYSED and NYPSP, had to provide proof that our items were OGS approved so they could be included in the marketplace. I believe that these items may be being produced by Corecraft, but this seems as it's a brand new application, so it doesn't seem as though they were actually identified as preferred source items. And if you look at the list of products that that Corecraft has identified, specifically on a number of them, they specifically say OGS approved, and the balance do not. So on the list of items, and the way that the items are identified in the e-marketplace, NYSED has that business currently today. If the e-marketplace is changed, NYSED stands to lose significant business because there is significant overlap with the product.
Are there any other questions for the representative from NYSED? David?
So related to that, so are you able to, so the amount of business that you had received through e-marketplace for these products, are you saying that that's the 1.5 million potentially that you would be losing?
As we did a cross comparison of the products that were listed on the items that are identified in the core craft versus exact matches to NYSED product or essentially the same products, we looked at our sales through the first 11 months of our fiscal year, and that represents about $1.5 million in sales that's potentially going to be lost.
And as a follow-up, so are some of those items that you're offering, are those items purchased from CoreCraft?
No.
Are there any other questions to the representative from NYSED?
Well, actually, I don't know if it's NYSED or OGS. So, I mean, regarding the e-marketplace, so is the statement that right now the preferred offerings, the preferred source offerings that are on the e-marketplace list certain items that currently aren't listed for CoreCraft. So, if somebody put in a product, they wouldn't see the CoreCraft offering right now, so they would go to one of the other preferred sources. Is that what you're trying to correct?
In order to put this in the e-marketplace, we are making sure there is a check mark on the list of preferred source offerings, or we won't put it in the list. As I said before, this is kind of complicated with the pricing and all of that stuff, which makes this a little bit unique. But all of these items that are offered for sale have been for sale, are currently for sale, and are in CoreCraft's catalog. We are trying to get them implemented into the e-marketplace. We are going to continue to add items to the e-marketplace from vendors, from preferred sources. It's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. So hopefully users can use that to get the best pricing and find the items that meet their needs. It's part of their determination of form, function, and utility, which one works.
We understand that, we understand that OGS doesn't have pricing oversight with regards to CoreCraft, but as far as adding a product onto the list of preferred source offerings, don't you have approval with regards to those items? So in effect, shouldn't there be approvals for these items that are looking to be added to the list?
So I want to address multiple of the items that are here. One of the issues is before there was e-marketplace, there were still approved items, right? So from OGS's perspective, cleaning products in general were an approved category for CoreCraft. Our concern has been without an enumeration of those products, that's a very, very broad category that would put CoreCraft naturally first in the order of precedence without necessarily the specificity that the other two preferred source entities have been entering into. In combination with that, the opportunity to use that enumeration to move items into the e-marketplace, into the electronic catalog, is a huge opportunity to increase user visibility into the opportunity to use preferred sources generally. So we've been trying to do those things simultaneously. So the answer to your narrower question is yes. As these items get identified specifically for CoreCraft, they will move to the top of the list, and that will be reflected in e-marketplace because both PSP and NYSED have some of these items already loaded into e-marketplace. But e-marketplace is not the exclusive system of record.
Right.
Right, so the CoreCraft catalog exists whether we import it into e-marketplace or not, and these items are identified as cleaning products. So the balance comes into by enumerating them. Yes, we have to check them off in e-marketplace. We have to do those additional things, but we also have some clarity into when those items are added. So in the same way that PSP and NYSED have to ask to add another item, and they have to make that application, this is a way to make sure that under the definition of cleaning supplies, that Corecraft is going through an equal process in an attempt to make sure that if it's a product that is provided, that it's very transparent what is provided under the approval and under the application. So that's the series of items that we're attempting to work through. And I think to the NYSED question, the difference of opinion here is the numbers we're using are reported sales from Corecraft. They're not speculative numbers. I mean, they're self-reported numbers in fairness, but they are reported numbers from Corecraft. So those are sales that are happening. And I think our challenge is if they're happening, they should be enumerated, and the Procurement Council should have transparency into that. So we struggle with an actual core difference of opinion of whether these items have been provided before and have not. In answer to a previous question, we were given a comment about what the financial impact would be. We were not provided backup material for that. So, that's why we are very appreciative that NYSED is here today, so that we can also get clarity on what the financials are that drive those expectations, that 1.5 million, and those labor numbers that their comment calls into question. So we very much appreciate you being here to do that, and thank you for that. Does the council have other questions for OGS or for the representative from NYSED? Mary Beth.
Does this mean that every time that there's a new product, it will come before the Procurement Council?
So, and I keep deferring to make sure that I'm answering your question correctly. If the sales volume requires it to be brought here, if it's above the $500,000 mark, then yes.
So are you saying every product on here is above the $500,000 mark?
Cumulative. We are having them brought together, and we reviewed the volume, and the volume was 3 million, in the order of magnitude of $3 million.
But you could take individual action. So I'm just wondering whether the Procurement Council really needs to act in order for you to get what you need here, because it seems you've said many times that they already have this. It already is a preferred source. All you want to do is just make the list. But you can make the list one item at a time because none of the items over $500,000. And it's just concerning to me that the Procurement Council is being asked to vote on a matter when we've been, at least one entity has shared with us that this could have a very significant impact on their workers. And I understand that they didn't give you backup or that, you said they didn't give you backup to the information that they gave you. I don't know if OGS gave you backup to the information they gave you, but it seems that then there's a need for more information then, and I don't know when you asked for it. I don't know any of that. I'm just concerned that if that's correct, that we ought to at least find a way to maybe soften the blow somehow.
Go ahead. Sean? I'm sorry. I want to
Tom.
focus on what you are asking us, because I think that we've gone down different trails and I think we might have lost. You're saying that the items that all the preferred sources have been approved for because it's a general description, it's not listed. You've asked them to show that it's been approved, it fits under the category. And what you're saying is there are some items that don't fit under certain categories that they have already approved. You're asking us to say these categories fit cleaning supplies that would then fall to a preferred source offering that they've already offered. You're not asking us to add any new products, just to clarify to to the general procurement, state procurement officers that these have been approved and they're under these categories. Moving forward, if NYSED or Corecraft or PSP has items that they want to add, they need to fall under these categories of cleaning supplies. Is that correct?
So, if I can try to address your concerns, both, I think the Procurement Council and staff to the Procurement Council are in a little bit of uncharted waters for some of these items. Some of our, had this been proposed as a new application today, we would be requesting an enumerated set of products, right? That would be our expectation. In the past, that has not always been the practice. And in some cases, whether they are actually big categories or they are just give the impression of being big categories, there's a lack of definition and a lack of finite sort of restraint on those. So when we talk about impact to other businesses and we just talk about cleaning supplies, one of the exercises this council has been going through is definitions, being very clear about what it is we mean when we use words. This is an exercise in being very clear on what we mean when we say cleaning supplies. This is so to some extent the answer is both. At some point the Procurement Council approved cleaning supplies. Right. As Corecraft's capabilities have increased and as their opportunities have increased, this council has never had an opportunity to revisit what that means, and certainly not this council under this configuration. So as this council is the approving body, to the question we were asked about whether we needed to bring it here, getting this council's input and getting value add from the council about what does cleaning supplies mean is relatively important. I think we would all agree. So the question is, how do we navigate that?
Right. And that's,
right. So when OGS reviewed it, we reviewed it as items that were already being sold that the Procurement Council had no transparency into, because we were concerned that we didn't know what cleaning supplies meant. So there are a lot of items on that list, and this is the exercise of defining those. This is the exercise of holding Corecraft to the same standards that a new application from NYSED or from PSP would be held to. And with Corecraft's preference, that's enormously important, is that the preferred sources are treated in that sort of level playing field. So if the Procurement Council's advice is we didn't need to ask you, I would much rather have asked you anyway on that. If the Procurement Council's concern is this a new item, that's an issue of, we think it's an issue of fact because there are sales under the Corecraft Preferred Source Program, under the catalog of these items already. So we feel like the order of precedence is already reflecting that. If it's an issue of, if there's any possibility that these claims are true, absolutely. We would love to hear about that. We would love to figure out a way to administer that. We didn't have it available to us, and it was important to us to involve the council in this decision. So I'm open to asking the question to NYSED to enumerate that 1.5 million and also to enumerate those staffing concerns. I'm open to actions of the council if the council has a discomfort. Certainly there are procedural options that the council has. I don't think OGS or the staff to the Procurement Council or OGS staff have the independent ability to decide that this is not important for the council to consider. So the way to do that was for us to make a recommendation to have that application. Is it an application? Is it a clarification? It's really an issue of fact. what is the role of the procurement council here? Also an issue of fact. Erring on the side of caution, OGS believes it's prudent to bring this to the council. It was originally the council that defined the scope very broadly, and it is certainly in the council's purview to define the scope more narrowly, or to just leave it as cleaning supplies undefined. As we have some operational considerations, we are hoping eventually to get to a line item identification of items, because we believe that is the most comprehensive way to leverage technology for state agencies for the procurement. So we have both of those lanes we're trying to drive in at the same time, and we're open to perspective from the council about how to approach this. OGS went through the process in good faith, found that there were sales on there through the Corecraft catalog, and we identified it as items that were already in existence, which is why we brought it to the council. The council certainly has all sorts of both procedural and operational ways to address that if the staff recommendations don't create a level of comfort.
So the universe of cleaning supplies that all three preferred source offer have been looked at. This is the final piece, is my understanding, right? And what it has identified is there are 4 categories that make it more clear to define, like we've tried to do with the services, what cleaning services are. So you're just asking the council to agree that these 4 would fit under cleaning. They're already existing under the current more broader undefined. They're already existing as preferred source offerings, and that's all that's really being asked right now. To Mary Beth's point, if a product becomes new, are you saying that we would have to add that only if it reached a certain level? A monetary level, I'm sorry. Is that?
So I continue to look to council and staff to make sure that I'm not giving you the wrong answer, but that is our understanding of it. And at the same time, that there would be an expectation that if a product or a set of products grew to that level, that this council is the one with the authority to approve that application.
And is the current state with these are not, this hasn't been voted on, so is it restricting Corecraft from selling those items as preferred sources on the e-marketplace right now?
I think we would say that it is definitely restricting them from selling it on e-marketplace because it requires items to be enumerated. Right. The flip side to that is this would actually narrow the definition for Corecraft because it's not preventing them from selling these products right now under the existing definition of cleaning supplies just through their catalog.
Thanks.
Sorry, Jerry?
One of the things I think it's important for the members to understand is the difference between how Corecraft operates and how the other preferred sources. Clearly, the statute says docs is first, and then we go down the pecking order. But having been around prisons for a while, I can tell you that the ability of docs to manufacture an unlimited amount of anything is about 0. They have facilities, they're a state agency, they get budgets and don't get money in the budget sometimes. So I would foresee, no matter how we resolve this individual issue, that there probably will always be sales for all 3 levels, because docs, among all of them, has certain products that they produce a lot of and some they produce a little of, and they have a limited staff from both the corrections side and from the inmate side. They have limited space to produce it. So unlike most private entities, they can't just go out and find another building and go into it and have people show up the next day and start manufacturing and delivering. So I think it's one of those things we need to realize that there is a governor on this already, this car that restricts how much docks could produce of anything. So it's not like tomorrow you're going to lose 3 million or whatever, because I don't think docks is geared up to run everybody out of the business.
Are there any other points for discussion?
I just want to say this is the third application in a row where the comments have been, don't worry, the preferred source won't be able to do all the work, so it's okay to approve them having this essential monopoly because they really won't be able to implement it. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here for the Procurement Council to put this sort of back on OGS to do what they would do. So if a new product were to come forward, OGS would make that decision on a product-by-product basis. So I would like to I don't know if it's put a motion forward or whatever, but to suggest that OGS do exactly that for the products on this list. Look at them on a product-by-product basis, and if they're over $500,000, then bring them to the council. And if they're under $500,000, do not. Especially since you're saying they're already approved products. It just seems that there's really no need for the Procurement Council to get involved in the vast majority of this.
So there certainly are procedural ways to do that. There is not a motion on the table yet to approve. So the council could remain silent, and in the absence of a motion, I believe the procedure would be that it would become tabled, right? Hold on one second. So we have several options. One is the council could take no action. The second is you could make a motion that this is actually in the responsibilities of OGS, which would mean that we would go through, deal with each of those items, and then because each individual item doesn't rise to the $500,000 limit, it could be an item that didn't have to come back to the council. It could be tabled, which would then require us to, at some point, address that and make a motion to bring it back to the floor. And that could come with instructions of what the expectation would be before it came back to the floor. You know, in the absence of a motion to approve, those really are the procedural opportunities. There is technically a procedural opportunity to do nothing, which would be fairly unprecedented, and we would have to figure out how to address that. There is an additional concern that if an application has come before the council, we would want to make sure there is a statutory requirement that if it's not considered by the council within 120 days, it would be approved. So we would want to be very clear in any action we took if the expectation was that this was going to come back to the council, that 120-day period would be suspended. Because it will expire between now and the expected next date of the council meeting. So, you know, as chair, I don't have a recommendation either way. My guess is OGS staff would say we're happy to do it, but is that the role the Procurement Council wants us to have without oversight on that next step?
Can I ask a clarifying question on what you just said? So the 120 days, if we take no action, but if we table it, does the 120 days continue? For example, we tabled the mail fulfillment application. Is the 120-day clock ticking on that one?
Tabling this application would be considered an action and would not trigger the 120-day expiration.
Okay, so if we take this application and return it to OGS for action, is that taking an action?
Yes, it is. Okay. So by definition, this council taking an action requires us to call for a vote.
Okay.
So it would be a motion of some sort.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
Can I ask one question before?
Yes, please.
Just, Chris, in terms of the dollar amount, collectively, are you looking at the three new categories, is that what triggered it, or is it individual, each one of them? The collective cleaning group or the collective 3?
It's not just 3 products, it's the collective group for that dollar value, based on the report that was submitted by the commissioner.
Right, so for example, automatic dishwasher, rinse aid, that solely is above the monetary threshold.
No, I can't say that. All of them together.
All 3 of them?
No,
or
everything,
the whole cleaning?
all 50 products.
Okay.
All right, 3 million.
So can I ask another clarifying follow-up on Tom? So looking at the attachment B, there's 3 new categories: the dishwashing liquid, the mold and mildew, and then the windshield wiper fluid. So those 3 new categories, you're saying the value of those products probably does not exceed the 500,000, but the breakdown of the 1 through 14, is that you're trying to break out what was currently known as cleaning supplies in order to be able to put this on the e-marketplace? Is that why you're putting into those groups? So again,
Right.
those products are currently being offered and currently approved to be offered by Corecraft. But the problem is that the potential is that the value of all those 50 products, they already previously have approval for. You're just breaking them down in order to list them in the e-marketplace.
That is our understanding of what we're doing. We're acknowledging the concerns that have been expressed. That is our expectation of what we're doing. And because the group cleaning supplies, as it was approved, is above $500,000, it was our understanding that it was appropriate to bring it to the council.
Right. So, but the reason for breaking down the 14 categories isn't a request by Corecraft. It's because you're trying to now put these in the buckets to list in the e-marketplace?
I believe a large driving factor is to make sure that those are sortable electronically, and that you can search for them.
So right now, we don't know. I mean, the value of because in my eyes, I would believe that to come in front of the Procurement Council, the value of the 3 new categories didn't exceed the $500,000, and I don't know if it's each individual category or combined. It will be 3 separate applications that at that point, then it would be required to be acted on by the council. Am I interpreting that?
So, again, we're sort of in uncharted waters about how this applies here. So I think what our suggestion would be is, Michael, if you have a comment, great, and then otherwise we have a motion on the floor, and if the council then wants to proceed with that motion along with instructions, that would be appropriate at that time.
Just regarding the categories, Corecraft did not ask for the categories to be split out. We were happy with the way things were with the categories, and dealing with OGS and the new approach to the preferred sources. That's when these categories came into play.
So is part of the issue that is Corecraft trying to get products listed on the e-marketplace, and you guys aren't putting it on because it's not on the approved list, and you want that on the list before you're putting it on the e-marketplace?
Yes, and just to further enumerate, in 1996, when the list was created, Corecraft had cleaning products. That's all it said. We have no other approval aside from what was approved in 1996 with cleaning products. So in order to say they have approval for these items, we were trying to get them through the Procurement Council to be able to add the check mark on the list so that, yes, we can put it in the e-marketplace.
So is currently any of Corecraft's cleaning products listed on the e-marketplace now?
We believe that furniture is not cleaning products. We would be happy to double check for you.
No, I'm
But
just wondering if
we believe Corecraft's furniture is listed, but that their cleaning products are not.
Okay.
Charlotte.
I think the e-marketplace's Amazon.com experience for purchasing is a critical improvement, and it's going to be very important as we move towards electronic procurement in New York State. And it seems to me that all we're really doing is articulating each item so they can get on the e-marketplace. But they're already preferred source items, so I guess I don't really understand what the difference is if the council approves it or if OGS goes back and approves it one item at a time, except I think we'd be imposing a huge burden on OGS to look at these items one at a time.
Charlotte, your comments are appreciated for the concern of the labor of the staff. However, Mary Beth has a motion on the floor.
I haven't actually made a motion
You haven't
yet.
actually made it yet. Okay, I apologize. Stephen.
So, pretty much, Steve Cazzarda. The second, what Charlotte said, is it seems like all these things have been approved, but the marketplace has changed how it operates in a world of whatever. And it would seem that that part of the concern has been that we would have to individually approve things going forward because they would prevent. But I don't believe that's what you're basically saying. You're basically defining in today's world what was prior said and getting the approval of the council here to do that. And going forward, if items got added and those items were less than the threshold, it would be up to you to add them or not add them or whatever. Is that correct?
I believe so. Noreen, do you want to clarify?
Yeah. So what has happened is when the list was created in 1996, cleaning products was a category heading. And since 1996, we don't find that Corecraft has come to the Procurement Council for approval for any of its cleaning products except for one. So they have all these other cleaning products, some of which we believe they've been selling, but they never came to the Procurement Council for approval for those items, even though they've been selling them. And that's what we're trying to do. So while we say they were approved before, the category heading of cleaning products was approved, but the individual items, we couldn't find approvals for them. When we went to do this true up for e-marketplace, we went to NYSID, we went to PSP, and we found out that they had actual approvals for various products throughout the years, but hadn't gotten check marks. But we couldn't find any records that Corecraft was coming to the Procurement Council and saying, we're going to sell this germicidal cleaner, and would you approve it? And that's what we're trying to correct now, is they have been selling them, they are in their catalog. When people go to Corecraft, they believe that these are approved preferred source items. People are buying them from them, but we can't find the approvals. And that's what we're trying to do now, is actually get the products approved so that they can then go in the e-marketplace, and then they're approved under particularized categories.
That's what I meant to say, but just not as eloquent as you said. The other comment I'd like to make is regarding NYSED's claim about the 1.
Can you speak into the microphone a
I'm
little
sorry,
bit more?
I was reading that.
Yeah.
About NYSED's claim about the $1.5 million loss in business. It would seem that if somebody's to make a claim that it was going to have an effect on their business, they need to substantiate it with backup. Just to delay the process because a claim is made, an unsubstantiated claim, would seem to be counterintuitive to me about the process that we're supposed to move forward on.
I can't hear him.
I don't think the mic's on.
Stephen, would you repeat that?
Yes. Like I just said, it would seem that if we delayed the process because NYSED made a claim of $1.5 million, that was basically unsubstantiated. They understand the process. They understand that they have to substantiate what they say. And that for us to delay because that backup was not provided would seem not the purpose of the council to me, that we should really move forward on this.
I think we would say that that's for discussion for the council. OGS staff reviewed it, expressed a recommendation on that, but that really is a discussion for the council. No.
Why throw it out?
I know.
Can I just ask, when did you ask NYSED for further information? How long ago? Has it been a while and they...
We asked in the end of August.
Excuse me, I believe you asked for comments. on the application, which we responded to, and then we were never asked to substantiate the dollar value that we outlined in our comments.
We were asked on Friday.
I would have to check, but I'm not disagreeing with you. So in order to avoid the 120-day statutory, I am still looking for a motion of some sort when the council is ready. Charlotte.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the council staff's recommendation.
Okay, so there is a motion to approve on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Again, Jerry. Okay, discussion. David.
Again, I mean, I'm still having a hard time of if the value of the new categories doesn't exceed OGS's threshold, why is the council being asked to vote on this? I mean, if it's, I mean, again, you're doing this for e-marketplace to come up with categories. Tomorrow you guys come up with a new category. Are we going to, even though it's a cleaning supply, are we going to be asked to vote on that new category? It doesn't seem to make sense. I think our obligation would be to approve the new categories if the $500,000 threshold was reached. So I'm kind of confused.
So I think our train of thought is the Procurement Council approved cleaning supplies as something of such size that it rose to the level of the Procurement Council reviewing it. In clarifying that, if there's any question about whether the Procurement Council should approve it or not, the harm is in not asking the Procurement Council, because it would create a situation where the items had been approved and then were challengeable because they had not been approved. There's less harm in bringing it to the council, and that is what we looked at as the correct way as a continuation of the council's original approval. If the council chooses to see it differently and empower OGS to make that decision, I don't think we would have a problem with that. But I think we would express the concern that the harm really is in not bringing it to the council in this case if we're wrong.
So moving forward, so next week, Corecraft comes up with a new cleaning product that they want to add to this list. If the threshold is under 500,000, OGS would be adding it, or would they be coming to the council to approve that new item?
No, our expectation would be that the normal process is that OGS would review the next item under $500,000.
So because there is no existing list, you're asking us to vote on the initial list, even though individually this would not reach the threshold to require us to approve it?
I think because the original application was voted on by this council, it seems like this council's prerogative to execute a clarification of that, and I think that's why it was brought here as an application. So there is not a go-forward intent to give up the OGS review of a $500,000 or less application.
So this goes back to my original point, was if we're looking at definitions for services, you're looking for a definition of cleaning supply. You have 3 categories that you've identified that were not on the list. Does the council agree that these are 3 cleaning supply fall under cleaning supplies? That's really what you're asking, right?
Basically,
Okay.
we're asking the council to clarify their 1996 approval of cleaning supplies for Corecraft.
I just want to make a statement. I'm just concerned that it seems to me that OGS has already the authority to administratively take care of this, that this is something that didn't need to come before the council, but you chose to bring it before the council. And in doing so, you also presented to the council that the Industries for the Disabled is concerned that 50 to 60 people will be put out of work should the council approve this application, but then said that we should just dismiss that claim because there isn't enough money, or enough information available to determine its validity, yet there's been no opportunity to approve its validity. I expect that the truth will be that OGS should, that these are part of cleaning services, that they should have been on the list all along, that perhaps NYS shouldn't have been doing this work or getting these services a preferred source, but that there's been some confusion out there. My concern is that I'm concerned that the Procurement Council is being used as a vehicle here to sort of make a correction that will impact the disabled in a it sounds like a fairly significant way, when in fact there's an administrative process already in place that could be used to address this issue. I guess that's really my statement.
I think our position on that is, if there's an opportunity to approve an application that we genuinely felt was under the $500,000 threshold, or that did not require the Procurement Council's opinion, we would not have brought it. The level of intensity and work that is involved in bringing it to the Procurement Council, that's why we expect to continue to approve the $500,000 levels. So this is OGS's review, looking at this, believing that because the original approval was done by the council above that threshold, that it is the council's prerogative to clarify that. In response to the other issue that is acknowledged as an issue that's been raised across the table, and we imagine it would shake out in the action on the motion that's on the table. So, is there any other discussion on the motion on the table? Stephen.
I would just go back to what I said before. It would seem from the information that we heard from NYS, they were only asked for comments and not asked to substantiate what numbers they gave. It would almost seem that we should give them an opportunity to do that. And I am concerned about what's been restated, that we're approving something that's already been approved. And it would seem that we should, maybe everyone should rethink, OGS should rethink of how these things are getting presented to us. And is there a way to do that, because everyone has these concerns?
Great, thank you.
So,
I don't mean to be rude, I didn't hear a question OGS was supposed to respond to, and that, was there one?
Well, it would seem, though there is a motion on the floor to approve, what would happen if we tabled this? I mean, could those issues be addressed?
So let's take two paths for that. Procedurally, what would happen is either the motion to approve would have to be withdrawn or voted up or down, and then there could be a motion to table. So procedurally, there is a mechanism for that. Mechanically, what would happen is I think the council would have to set some expectations of what it was that then released that at a future meeting from being tabled. And I think there's some value in the comments that have already been read into the minutes. I think there's always going to be a balance between which parts of those, in preparation for this meeting. To some extent, if a business was going to be greatly impacted, I probably would have detailed that in my response. And I wrestle with the difference in role between the staff asking for that comment and being expected to probe multiple times to get that response. And I would be open to council comment even after the council meeting about how deep that expectation goes for our staff to help prepare the answer in addition to just report the answer. But there is absolutely a procedural option, and there is absolutely, there has been repeated several times a discomfort with that objection and that objection being unresolved. So the procedure is there is a motion on the table. it can be withdrawn, someone can propose a substitute motion, or we can vote on the motion at hand and then consider the ramifications of that after that vote. Thank you for your comments, Stephen.
So, David Russo, LMH, so can I request that the motion to approve be withdrawn?
So the only person who can withdraw that motion is you, Charlotte. You would prefer to have an up or down vote on that, okay? The mechanics here are, so the only person who can withdraw the motion is the person who proposed it. You can request a motion to, what did we decide it was? To substitute. So you could make a motion to substitute, and that would then require a second and require a vote, and the motion to substitute would then be some other motion in place of the motion on the table. Or we can call the motion that is on the table, allow that to be discussed and voted on, and then we can consider a second motion in order. There's a distinction without a difference, really, is based on the temperature in the room. There's probably a distinction without a difference. I can't speak for that specifically, but we're open. The chair is open to any motion that the council wants to make.
So I would like to make a motion to substitute the motion on the table.
Okay. Is there a motion second? Mary Beth?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there discussion on the motion to substitute? Charlotte, since your motion is being substituted? It's a fair question. David, I'm sorry. The motion to substitute, what are we substituting it with?
To request that this item be tabled and to get additional information and clarify what the expectations are of what the council would like OGS to do prior to the next council meeting.
Okay. Mary Beth, your second is still okay?
I'm not sure I understood what David just said, so say it
Okay.
again,
So
Dave.
to table the vote today in order to get additional information from both what the preferred source and clarifying information from OGS, because again, I would like to see a breakdown between the value of the products that Corecraft currently can offer as opposed to the value of the new categories that are being added to determine whether or not this is something that reaches a threshold that the council needs to vote on.
Okay. Mary Beth?
I second.
Mary Beth seconds. Is there discussion on the motion to substitute? Lisa?
Yes, this is Lisa from OPWDD. It may be helpful to get from both NYSID and Corecraft more detail relative to, for Corecraft, how much you anticipate your sales volume increasing now that you're going to be put to the top in e-marketplace, and will your current staffing, both inmates and state staff, be able to handle that volume? Because if not, then it would fall to the next vendor, preferred source. And then likewise, if NYSID could provide more detail relative to individuals with disabilities losing their position in the form of FTEs versus just staff losing their jobs would be helpful. Thank you.
Lisa, just for clarity, is your expectation that they would do that now, or is your expectation that they would do that if the motion to table is successful?
If the motion to table is successful, that would be additional information in addition to OGS reviewing what Dave Russo from OMH requested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the motion to substitute? Charlotte?
I'd just like to say that I think as we move forward with the e-marketplace, all kinds of things are going to start evening out. While it may be true that NYSID is going to lose business, it may be true that NYSID will get more business if NYSID isn't getting the purchasing that they're supposed to be getting right now, because there is a lot of confusion on the part of the agencies, and some agencies may not be following the preferred source hierarchy correctly, and I think the e-marketplace is going to straighten that out.
Are there any other comments on the motion to substitute? David?
So, I mean, regarding the products that Corecraft currently is approved to sell, I don't understand that the why OGS can't add those items prior to us having to vote. I mean, again, if they're cleaning products and they're already approved as a product that they can provide, why couldn't they be added now? Again, I think the only things that wouldn't be able to be added would be the items that are listed under the new categories. Am I misinterpreting? I mean,
So I think that item has been addressed several times, and it seems unresolved. So I think there is an opportunity, if we pursue the line the council is on right now with an open motion, if the issue ends up tabled, those are all questions from the council that can be addressed. If not, they can go into discussion on the motion to approve. Are there any other discussions on the motion to substitute? No. Okay, seeing none. The chair would like to restate the motion that we are voting on so that there is clarity. There was a motion to approve. There is now a motion on the table to substitute that motion to approve with a motion to table. A yes vote in this case would make the new motion a motion to table, and then we would take a vote on the motion to table. So we're gonna vote twice, once to substitute the motion on the table, and the second time to actually vote on the new motion, which is the motion to table. Before we do that, does anybody need any clarification about what we're voting on? Okay. Seeing none, the chair is calling for a vote to approve the substitution and then consider the motion to table this application. If you're voting yes for that, would you please put your hand up? 1, 2, 3. So the 3 yeses are Mary Beth from Department of Health, yes, right? Lisa from OPWDD? Yes. And David from OMH? Correct. Great. If you're voting no on the substitution, would you please raise your hand? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the motion carries. The motion fails to provide a substitute motion. Okay. Even I have no. I'm trying to keep track of it. Now, Charlotte, your motion to approve is now the main motion on the table. Does anybody have any other discussion on that before we call for a vote? David.
so can we get clarification? Did OGS request supplemental information from the preferred source on fronting back up to their claim of the 1.5 million, 50 to 60 positions?
Let me check. We believe we did not.
Does OGS have reason to believe that the information provided by NYSED is incorrect or false?
OGS's review was based on the fact that these items were already approved and already being sold by Corecraft. So in the absence of justification, we didn't know how to draw any conclusion that would support the reduction of individuals who are individuals with disabilities from the NYSED program, or a reduction in sales from that from that program.
So if I could just restate, and this may sound rude, but it's not intended to. Essentially, what I hear is that OGS says it's somewhat irrelevant because it has no reason, it doesn't impact the decision as to whether these are cleaning items or not, and so whether they're eligible to be on the OGS preferred source listing or not.
No, I think very relevant, and we always take the comments from everyone who provides that seriously. Though, in the absence of justification, we could not imagine a situation where that was true, because because all of the items were already being purchased through the Corecraft catalog. So it was a very big assertion that seemed like it should have come with an affirmative justification. And in the absence of an affirmative justification, it was very clear that these items were already being sold, and we had no expectation that that was an issue going forward.
Did you ask OGS at any time, or Corecraft at any time, whether there had been opportunity or instances where they were asked to provide product but were unable to do so, clearing the path for entities to go to others such as NYSED?
We'd be happy to double check, but we don't believe so. David?
So when did OGS look at the e-marketplace for the products that are currently being offered by the preferred source as to the value of those products as to compare to once we add these products from Corecraft?
We did not. Our expectation is that agencies that should be buying from a preferred source would be buying these from Corecraft right now.
Right, but I didn't know if that would be able to substantiate the 1.5 million, if that would be part of the analysis that would be done.
It was not currently part of the analysis, no. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, there's a motion on the table to approve the current application. All council members in favor, please raise your hand. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The chair sees 11. All council members opposed, please raise your hand. Chair recognizes Lisa from OPWDD and David from OMH as no votes, correct? Correct. Are there any abstentions? No. There's 2 recusals, is that correct? Both NYSED and... Yes. Yeah, so there's 1 recusal, and since the last time we called quorum, I believe, is Ron Tescarella anywhere in the room? No, okay. Having identified all of those, there are 11 yes votes, which means the motion to approve carries. And thank you all for the good discussion on those issues. Continuing
If I
on with
could.
our agenda.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
if I could, just for the record, for OPWDD, we don't have a problem with having apples to apples in the e-marketplace. We just wanted a little bit more information in regards to possibly losing jobs for individuals with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lisa. And, you know, OGS is very committed to making sure that individuals with disabilities are successful under these programs. We spend a lot of time going through that. The council's comments will all be taken under consideration as a go-forward understanding of what the council's expectations are of staff.
Can I ask that should NYSED provide you the information that you haven't asked them for yet, that you would share that with the council?
Absolutely. The OGS is staffed to the council, and it is our expectation that communications meant for the council obviously will be distributed that way. There are 2 reporting items on the agenda. So we're going to ask staff to report on the status of the 2016 single source reporting. Well, that's also fair, given the time. Is the council interested in those reports now, or do they want to table them for the next meeting? Charlotte?
Motion to table?
Motion to table. Is there a second? Second. All in favor of the, I'm sorry, wait. Discussion on the motion to table. No, okay. All in favor of the motion to table, please raise your hand. Seeing unanimous consent, I'm sorry, not unanimous consent. Are there any objections to the motion to table?
Oh, no, I raised my hand.
The last 2, the reports. We're tabling the last 2 reports. So, Ron, are you a yes to tabling?
Absolutely.
You are. Okay, great. So seeing a unanimous vote, we will table those 2 items. We'll just deal with the procedural items that are at the bottom. First and foremost, is there any new business for the council? David.
Just moving forward, I mean, with these preferred source offerings, the memos for the council to review these offerings were given to us today. In the future, would it be possible to have these provided to us a little bit sooner so we can absorb them a little bit better?
We agree. As you look at the schedule for the next meetings coming up, the intention is to create that time. In this case, there were 2 meetings very close together. So you are absolutely correct. The council should see those in advance in order to review. Thank you for that comment. Stephen?
And I also would ask when, on situations like this, when we're asking for comments from other sources, and you reached a conclusion that there was nothing to substantiate it, that there is some paper trail or at least comment of exactly when the request was made and they received no response. And this way, we wouldn't have to ask all those questions because we'd already know.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you for that comment. And I think OGS would be open to comments from the council about how that material would be portrayed in the future on future memos, because that is their role as staff to the council. So if anybody has additional feedback on that, either now or in the effort to go to your next meeting, if you want to share that with us after the meeting, that would be fine also. Ron?
Yeah, Ron Romano. I was just wondering, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, there was discussion about the council considering public comment. And I thought that was going to come back before the council at some point. So I would just ask, that we consider putting that on the agenda going forward. And I think there was also something in this package referencing public comment. So I think it would be a good idea to address it and decide whether or not that's applicable here in this instance.
That's one I need to own as the new chair of the committee and in the new role. That is absolutely an item that has been raised, and because of the time frame, did not make this meeting. And we understand that is an item that was raised for consideration.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Okay. Couple quick housekeeping items. The 2017 meeting dates do appear below the agenda. There is a primary date and a backup date. So certainly as you're looking at your calendar for next year, if you could give us feedback as soon as possible about those dates. Those are the dates right now that we would hope that the council would hold for the meetings in 2017. We also have a business process change to relieve some of the mechanical work on the staff. It's our expectation that material that has been submitted a week or more or been prepared a week or more before the Procurement Council meeting will be posted to the website and delivered electronically to everyone. Is everybody, we'd like to ask the question, did everybody get the emails? Is everybody able to link to all of the electronic documents? Our preference going forward is to not produce paper copies except of things that change within that week of the meeting to make sure that you have current versions. We would also post those to the website, but our expectation would be to not print the packets and have them here for you when you arrived. From a procedural standpoint, if that raises any issues, we hope you'll address that either with me or with staff to the council sooner rather than later, because we are attempting to modernize a little bit the way that information is delivered to you. Other than that, I need a motion to close the meeting. Is there anybody interested in that? Mary Beth? I need a second. Ron? All in favor of closing this meeting? Great. I'm giving everybody a chance in case they're looking at their BlackBerries. Okay. Are there any objections to closing the meeting? Abstentions? Recusals? Seeing none, this meeting of the Procurement Council is closed. Thank you very much for your active participation, and we look forward to seeing you at the February meeting of the Procurement Council in 2017.